All right, greetings everybody. Tansen here, Randall, Dominique, the whole gang, and it's May 19th, 2021. A beautiful, beautiful time in the history of mankind where transformation is occurring, and we are a part of it. And we're helping to protect assets and helping people to be private and to stay out of trouble, keep assets and keep lives out of harm's way. So, Brilliance in Commerce, Project of Verite, House of Freedom International Natural Law Trust, Liberty Debt Elimination System, and affiliations and special offers to improve people's lives and make this world a better place. We are signatories on the Worldwide Charter for Fair International Commerce. There's our certificate. You can see more information on that on the website. Today, May 19th, we have Randall has said, let's go do another one in June. And so instead of doing every other month, we're going to go ahead with June 16th for the next one, and then take a break for 2 months, take a summer break. So put that on your calendar, June 16th for the next one. We have a phone number for those who need it, 360-200-7521. And for those who don't have a web address, we prefer that you go to your affiliate who introduced you. And if you don't have one, go to house-of-freedom-trust.com. My name is Tansen Fairmont. I'm the founder of Brilliance in Commerce, consultant in bank instruments programs. I've been a speaker on various radio shows and seminars and author of a couple of books and chief cook and bottle washer. So Randall is our illustrious head of the trust department here and the creator of the House of Freedom Trust and White Light Unlimited, One People's Public Trust, and creator of this flagship asset protection instrument. And I wish to thank our associate, Dominique Hackett, for helping me and many others to appreciate the genius that Randall's put into this trust way more than we ever thought. We knew how it was one of the best in the world, but she's gone deeply into the details and the mechanics and has analyzed it and said, wow, that clause is in there. And that clause came from an obscure book of study of law books that Randall's been studying. And I haven't seen it in any other trust, and it's not present in statutory trusts. And, you know, and on and on and on, all these provisions in the natural law trust that just, we don't know of any other trust that combines all of those clauses. So Dominique, thank you. And thank you for joining us with us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dominique. My co-author now.
Co-author, yes. All right. Today's webinar, Duty of Loyalty, Part 1.
Yes, the duty of loyalty. So that's loyalty comes in a lot of different colors, as we well know. And what we want to do today is cover the first part. It's very lengthy, and Dominique and I had an incredible chat just, for the last half hour before we did this. And you see the many ways in which it's all intertwined. And the loyalty is like, okay, who's loyal? Who are you being loyal to? And that's what we're, going to dwell on in the next 2 parts. So, duty of loyalty. Okay, well, in particular, it's anybody has a loyalty. If you, in ordinary circumstance, somebody asks you to take $10 and go to the store and buy a particular item, and you're loyal, then you're going to come back with that $10. If you don't, then you're not loyal. So something's amiss. And it's exactly how it fits into being a trustee. Okay, so the trustee has to take on that duty of loyalty. Well, who is he loyal to? What does it mean? Does it mean in one particular sense, or it depends? My favorite, my mentor from a long time ago said it all depends. So we'll not dwell on that, but okay, so we're going to go from personal loyalty to the loyalty of being a trustee. Okay, so because that's what we do, we talk about trust and how the trust protects assets and how there's a duty of loyalty in that aspect of it. So there are three main parts of the trust, as we know. There's the grantor or the settlor, the trustee, and then the beneficiaries. And basically, it's a contract between three people, typically, or more. But that's pretty much it. So who are the principals? You know, Tanzan, do we have slides today, or am I going to read off my script?
There you go.
Hey, look at that. I was a bad boy. I didn't get my crib sheet to Tanzan in time today. Anyway, so here we go. We have the duties of loyalty, the fiduciary. Who is the fiduciary? Typically, it's the trustee or the fiduciaries. And what they do is they have legal title to the property or assets in a trust. They're the ones that take care of it. They keep it all. If you're a juggler and you have three balls, you got to keep them in the air all the time. So the fiduciary or trustee is that particular person that really governs the whole process. The principal usually is the grantor or settlor or whoever actually gifts things into the trust would be a principal. So in other words, there's that, the principal, and then also the principal may be the beneficiary. So this says employees because I was using a different example, but basically you have a trustee, you have the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. And the loyalty is contingent upon the trustee or fiduciary. So the idea is the trustee must take responsibility and he must use his, it's not just the fact that he's a trustee and got stuck here for a minute, but he's got to take and make it all happen. So he has the responsibility to not just take this opportunity to make things work, and he can't. It's like I'm missing the word. I guess I left it in the doorstop when I came in, but anyway, airtime is expensive, so we'll just keep moving forward. So he can't just take an assumption or it's a discretionary power is the word I'm looking for, his discretion. But his discretion goes beyond just his knowledge of what the trust is, what the trustee's duties are, et cetera. The discretion is that he has to carry forward contingent upon the potential of where the trust is going and what it's doing for the beneficiaries. So he's like, he is more than just who he is. He's got to take responsibility for making the whole trust happen. So you're looking at the key player of the whole aspect of a trust, and that is your trusteeship.
Randall, can you move your camera down just slightly? That'll make your face more visible. Thank you. There
Sure.
you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Sliding into the ocean. Well, let's see. I remember flying in a dome like that. Do you? I bet Tanzan does.
Yes.
Okay. Next slide, please. Who and what is a fiduciary? Okay, we kind of already gone through this. I'm speaking probably faster than the slide machine is working. So we've covered who and what a fiduciary is. That's your trustee. And what is his responsibility? His responsibility is to be he has a discretionary responsibility to make sure that his judgment, actually, that's what discretion is having a judgment, making sure that that judgment plays into the enhancement of the trust assets. Okay, now enhancement of trust assets is not just necessarily doing the right investments or buying property or doing this, but it's maybe divesting itself of certain things that aren't producing as well. So he has to look at all of that. And sometimes his responsibility, he doesn't have enough his discretion is not astute enough to be able to make the best role happen. So what his duty is to hire an expert in that field of where he wants to take the trust asset. So in other words, he might be really good at real estate, but he's not good at money market or stock market funds. So the idea would be that he would then go out and find somebody that is a lot more responsible and has the discernment to make the right kind of opportunities happen. And we covered this as a trustee or a principal. Pretty much the trustee separates himself from the principal because otherwise you don't really have a trust. If you don't, and I try to get this with all our clients, is if you don't have the separation, in other words, people want to keep a real tight knit net around their asset base, but they don't have enough separation between people. In other words, you really need to have somebody that can say, no, you can't all be related. If you are related, why even have a trust? So it's really important to have that discernment, to have the right people in the right place at the right time, to be able to make judgments that are good for the asset base and for the beneficiaries. And beneficiaries have the ability to understand and know what's going on. A lot of times with a trust, certain trusts will stipulate that the beneficiaries can be involved and know what's going on. Although in a really well-written trust, the beneficiary only can demand that the trustee give him numbers at the end of every year or so. And that's what Dominique is actually working on. She's putting in a program where numbers can be put in the right out there and everything is accounted for. We're calling it trustee accounting. Is that correct, Dominique?
Yes.
Good. So we're on the right track. So we're being responsible, we're being discretionary, and we're making sure that the beneficiaries are well taken care of. That's the whole idea for all of us. Although the basic difference between having it in your own pocket and having it in a trust is that it's less liable to any, in this case, an indiscretion of the principal. As we know from the Kennedy estate, some indiscretions happen, but because it's all in trust, then it was all covered over and escaped with minor injuries.
Or
So
indiscretions of the principal's enemies.
Yes, as well. So that this is, I mean, this goes on and on and on. It just keeps unfolding and unfolding into magnificence of how we can make this all happen. Dominique, we're talking about how expansive this whole trust process is, and we'll keep on going. So I'll do the next slide. I'm over talking myself, I think. Okay, to whom is the trustee responsible? All right, so basically, he's responsible to the trust and the assets. And ultimately, the trust is responsible to make sure those assets are taken care of for the beneficiary, either one beneficiary or multiple beneficiaries. So that's his basic, he's like juggling three balls. He's got the trust assets, the trust and what it represents, and the beneficiaries. Who owns his duty? Well, the duty, his loyalty basically is to the trust and to the beneficiaries. It also reflects back onto the grantor. Grantor is the one that set this whole thing up in the beginning. He said, I have these assets. I want you to use your discretion and make sure that these assets are well taken care of, that we can enhance them, we can divest them. We make sure that ultimately, in the long run, the asset base continues to grow, because typically the whole family will grow if you've set it up that way. I have clients have, well, there's just the two of us now. And I said, well, you're young, you're healthy, maybe you're going to have children someday. They're going to have children, they're going to have children. How are you going to divest this and break it up so that everybody gets their due? Or what's the vision of what you think that they're due? So it's quite an expansive process. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick little question?
Sure.
One of the clients brought this up.
I want you. Quick little question, go ahead.
With most of us have our trust set up with trustees, but every now and then someone has set up a general manager. Can you talk about how and if this isn't the right time, fit it in.
No, it's a perfect time.
The manager's fiduciary responsibility is different from the trustee.
Yes, absolutely. Back in the olden days when we were just starting this ball game, I was anyway, typically the client would come to us and say, I have this asset base and I need somebody to come in and take care of it. And I need that separation between myself and my assets. And I wanted to go to certain beneficiaries. So we would be the trustee. We being plural, it was a group of us that acted as a trustee. And but we would appoint them to be general manager. And so they could take care of the day-to-day mechanism of the trust. And so they only had to come to us every once in a while and get our signature so that something could happen. They might want to divest, they might want to add to it. And that's what the general manager had. But the general manager always had to come to the trustee for the final word, because the trustee was on the hook for any kind of liability. The trustee has legal title to the asset, and the beneficiary has beneficial interest of the asset. So it depends on the loyalty of the trustee that the beneficiary has the most productive aspect of it. And the grantor can come in and manage the whole process. You know, some banks will actually let the manager be on the checking account. I've had that happen. Most banks only want the trustee, but especially this is where you also want to work with a banker that you might have a good relationship with. If you have that relationship, then a banker might allow a general manager to be on the signatory account as well. So it just depends on what kind of relationship you have with the bank. Some people come to us and they've been working with the banker for 20 years. And the banker says, okay, how do we want to do this? And okay, we can do this much here and we can do this much over here, but we can't, ultimately we have to get a trustee in here. every once in a while to sign these documents that we have in place. So, does CS trustee or principal own the property? Okay, the trustee has legal title, and you just covered this. The principal has a beneficial ownership of the property. That's typically how it is. The principal, well, sometimes the principal, well, if you have a nominee grantor, like Dominique is for us, she might be the nominee grantor and begin the trust, and then the principal would be the beneficiary. He's going to put his assets in and receive the asset base. You can do it that way. Does the trustee own it or control it? Well, he has legal title to it, but he doesn't really own it. His whole job is to make sure that it's taken care of for the benefit of the beneficiary. If he misdirects it, and he makes a mistake, then yes, it doesn't mean that he's been disloyal. It just means he made a mistake. Now, if he purposely misdirects it, then that's called breach of trust. And then he is held responsible for any inaction, and he can be personally liable. And this is why, if you're going to be a trustee, you want to make sure that you're willing to step in that role and have the discretion and the judgment to make sure that the asset base is in your forefront of your mind all the time. Are you taking care of this? Are you taking care of that? Are you checking on any managers that you might have? So it goes along like that. And it's really actually a fun job. As long as you only have to do so many trusts. You don't want to be, Dominique has a perfect experience to this. She started off saying, oh yeah, I'll be your trustee. And then all of a sudden she realized, wait, I can't do much. I can't do this. I can't do too many people. So that's why when we first started, there were a group of us, and we parceled out all the trustee jobs, and we all took on certain. Once that happened, we said we either train more trustees or we put them in a different direction. So again, the question is the trustee responsible to the grantor or the beneficiary? Well, like he says, it's both. You're responsible to the grantor, unless there was a nominee grantor. If it's a grantor that created his own trust, then you're responsible to the grantor and what his wishes are. The grantor can't make out a detailed list of what he wants you to do exactly. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a trust. He's got to use your discretionary ability to allow for nuances in that play of how to make the asset base stay together. And also, his responsibility is to the beneficiary. He's got to make sure that the asset base is well taken care of so that the beneficiary lives the lifestyle that ultimately the grantor wanted him to do. So that is responsible to the trust, is responsible to the grantor or settler, and he's responsible to the beneficiaries. Okay, next slide, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, be writing down your questions if you have any questions. And at a certain point, we will break for Q&A. And
Yes.
those calling in by phone, you can press *9 at that time. And those of you watching by video can click on the raise hand or type it into chat, either way.
Let's see, who would be the principal in this picture? One with the, oh, I see, it's right here. It's a set of flowers. Okay, who is the principal? Well, if you've ever been to the principal's office before, which I was quite familiar with as a young boy, I knew exactly who he was. And I escaped with minor injuries. Does he have possession of an asset before assigning it to the trust? It depends. If he may have, he may be the one that's putting in the asset base. There may be other people that are putting in. I have one client where actually the beneficiaries, there's a number of beneficiaries, and they're all putting in a certain base of the asset. And then they all get to collaborate and make sure that the asset base gets together. There's only 2 trustees to take care of it, have legal title to all those assets, but the beneficiaries all benefit numerously from that. Does he give up possession for the sake of the beneficiary, assigning it to the trust? Yes, you have to give up possession of your asset if you're going to put it in trust and you're going to have the beneficiary be the one that receives the benefit. Otherwise, you don't have a trust. So that the essence of that is, it's quite astounding when you think about it, because you're trusting this person or this group of people, usually it's 2 people, and you're trusting them to take this can be substantial asset, and they're going to take care of it for you for your benefit. So it's a very, in a sense, responsible job. It can be very expansive, doesn't have to be constrictive. And it just also depends on the grantor. Does he want it to be contained and be a smaller process, or does he want to enhance it? And I think it goes back to the type of person that is going to create this trust to begin with. What kind of client is he? Is he a fast pace? Does he want to go? It looks like this is a motorboat out enjoying a beautiful summer day in a sailboat, which is I like to be out there sailing. Of course, I wouldn't do it in a shirt and tie, but that's beside the point. Anyway, so the idea is that you make sure that the principal, the asset base is taken care of for the benefit of whoever puts money into the trust. Next slide, please. Who owns his loyalty? Well, actually, all 3 of you do. The trust owns the loyalty, the settlor, grantor, and the beneficiaries. They all have the loyalty of the trustee if, in fact, the trustee is going to step into the role, use his discretion or his judgment. And those are 2, that's the same thing. Discretion and judgment. You have to make a judgment call. You have to make it. I mean, I was an umpire in a ball league for 2 or 3 years during the summer, and it was very discretionary. You're out or you're safe. So all 3 people have the loyalty of the trustee. Another slide. Oh, I remember this. Yes. Okay. And trust, the trustee has volunteered to take on responsibility to the trust and beneficiaries or to a third-party contractor with the power to be discretionary. We just talked about this. The discretion of the judgment that the trustee makes is how the benefit of the trust works, how the beneficiaries benefit from it, how the asset base or the actually the trust base itself benefits from it. So to whom is the trustee responsible? Well, again, to the trust, to the settlor, to the beneficiaries. What does the indenture say about this? Well, basically, we have one little quote in here. It's a particular paragraph right within the trust trustees shall have full authority to hold an undivided interest in and determine at their discretion, i.e. their judgment, what is principal and what is income, and how it's distributed to its beneficiaries, and what is allocated to income or principal and expense. So this is a full-time job. And what, if any, is established and maintained as reserve or depreciation. And this is why I'm cozying up to Dominique here, because she's going to write a book on all of this, on how to make the money work within the whole trust document. The decisions of the trustees shall be binding and conclusive. The end. Okay, so I'm sure there's probably some questions floating around out there. Please ask away. I'm sorry, I can't see the screen.
Randall, we have a slide that says the actual powers of the trustee acting on the settlor principal's behalf must include making decisions of the discretionary nature regarding trust assets and cannot be specified in advance.
Yes, that's what we were talking about earlier, weren't we? So the idea is that you can have a wish list. I remember Tanzan and I talked about this early on, is that we have to define, okay, is the wish list is something that can be put there by the settlor. The grantor says, well, I want to do so much with my asset base, but in order to be properly functioning, you can't be specific. You can't say, I want this and I want this and I want this. You have to write kind of a opus, a whole scenario of how you'd like to see the whole vision of the trust go forward. Is that good enough, Don? Have they got questions from people?
So is
Somebody's happy.
is it common that the grantor might write a letter to the trustees talking about their vision for the next 10 or 20 years and his hope for future legacy?
Well, when you're forming the trust document, when the client comes to me and says, I want to do this and this and this, these are the beneficiaries, we have a form, and they have an idea of what they'd like to see. So that's how we start to formulate the whole trust document. There's a trust indenture. There's where all the signatures are. There's certain aspects of it. And then in the end are the minutes. And the minutes are where we have this kind of a wish list. And this wish list can be a yearly thing. It can be quarterly or monthly even. So it's the vision. It's like every month you might have a little slice of the vision that changes a bit. Or maybe a child is born, maybe a child gets married. So that's where you start to implement all of these aspects into the trust, because it's going to grow, especially if you're younger, the volume is going to grow significantly. That's why I say have a 3-ring binder and keep it all separated. And actually, you're going to have one binder that's basically just for the minutes, because it's just going to grow. And you can set that up any way you want. You can go earliest, latest, and vice versa. Dominique probably have a better idea of how to lay that in. But basically, the way I've done it for all these years is every time there's a new date, a new minute, it goes behind the other one, just like a calendar, I guess.
Yeah, my only thing that I add is I keep an index in the front of my minutes where I say just a little bit of what was in that minute, so that if I'm looking for something specific, I can glance on my index and then I know which minute had that information in it.
Great idea. There you go. That's why she's writing a book. Anybody else?
Randall, we have the next slide up. We're not yet in the Q&A section.
Oh. Okay.
So
Yeah,
I think we've,
allow for my inability to see so much anymore. The actual powers of the trustee acting on the settlor principal's behalf must include, I think we said this, making decisions of discretionary nature regarding the assets. So this is the difference we talked about. We said that the discretion was a judgment call. So that's two different words basically doing the same thing. Must use their best judgment in making a decision affecting the trust and its beneficiaries. So if you can't, if you're not really well versed, like in investments, then hire somebody to do your investing. Get somebody that likes to, is a high risk person to help you say, well, we might want to go down this avenue. Or maybe you're going to invite somebody in to do projects for yourself or for the trust. Distinguishing obligation of the fiduciary is the obligation of loyalty to the trust and ultimately to the beneficiaries. We talked about this, and that sums it up all right there. We began in one place and here we are finishing in the other, to the trust and ultimately to the beneficiaries. Questions, anyone?
Okay, everyone. If you want to write it into chat, or you can raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon if you're on video, or if you're by phone, you can press *9 and we can come on the air. And Dominique, you had a good question regarding the nominee grantor, and someone else, Michelle, has asked, what is the difference between a grantor and a nominee grantor? Randall, would you like to address that?
Yes, sir, I would. Nominee grantor is somebody that just comes in to establish the trust itself. It might be for somebody else.
Can you move your camera down a little?
Am I sliding into the ocean again?
Thank you.
Where am I?
There you,
I don't have my picture up.
down a little more. There you
there
go.
you go, right there.
The nominee grantor would be somebody that initiates the trust, and there may be other people assigning assets to the trust. Typically in the earlier days, we did, the client was the grantor. So he came in, it was his asset base, and he was putting it in, and we would be the trustee, and he would be a grantor, settlor. The nominee grantor is for somebody, Dominique has been our favorite, and she comes in to be nominee grantor, which allows us to create the trust around an asset base that is not hers, and somebody wants to put the asset base in, and typically they want to be one of the trustees that takes care of the asset base. That's how a nominee grantor would work. Nominee grantor, and then that way that the client can become one of the trustees, as long as the second trustee is non-related.
All
Is that
right.
clear?
We have a question from someone who signed in as admin. I don't know your name, but I'm asking you to unmute here.
Mr. Admin, how are you today?
So you have been asked to unmute yourself. So now you can click on your unmute button if you can. Calling for admin.
Oh, well, okay. I just in the absence of Mr. Admin or Mrs. Admin, I'm Phil Saunders here in good old downtown Queensland in Australia, part of Margot Gopal's team. My burning question straight away is, when are we going to see Dominique's book? Can I pre-order that? We'd like half a dozen copies.
Yeah, I'm completing a an online fiduciary accounting course to make sure that I have all the necessary things in my book. I'm trying to make it user-friendly for people who have their trust set up in a simple fashion, and maybe they're just working with reporting with a bank statement, because that's one of the fun things about the trustee's fiduciary role in the trust. The way that Randall's written the indenture, he's given the trustees full discretionary ability of how they're going to report on the finances of the trust. So I'm writing a book to make it easy for people who want to do it in an easy way, and more complicated double entry accounting for people who have maybe larger investments that they're having to care for as a trustee. Randall, can you speak to how you would in the past maybe do some sort of an annual summary report for your beneficiaries?
Thank you for that.
Oh, yes. Well, typically you have your first initial minutes when you start the trust. And then, as I talked earlier about, it can be monthly, it can be quarterly, depends on the significance of the estate, whether it's expanding quickly and you're bringing in administrators to help with that. And then at the end of the year, you want to have a summary. You have to have, it's really important to have at least a summary for each year. Now, typically it's what the activities of the trust were. It's not necessarily the money part of it. And that's why, Dominique, I think it's really important you hurry up and write this book. Come on now. Because we want to also take care of the money part too. But in the older days, we allowed the client to basically summarize his own money statement. And if it's not a big investment portfolio, your bank statement every month comes to you, and there's your money part of it right there. If you're dealing with much larger sums of money, and Dominique says it might be double entry. I don't know about double entry. I know about double barrel shotguns, but quick weddings and all that, But anyway, so that's just a different aspect of it. My goal when I'm talking to the client is to make sure that their activity, that what happened during the year, activity-wise, is the paper trail is really important. So whether it's money or whether it's activity, I think that's what we're looking at.
Thank
right.
you.
Irene, I see your hand. You have a question? No?
Irene, you've
Okay.
been asked to unmute yourself.
Can Grantor be a trustee? Hello?
To be a trustee.
Yes. The music's on.
I can't turn it off because I'm at the Starbucks.
Okay, Irene, thank you so much.
Okay, we're at Starbucks now. We're big time.
I'm just curious, can Grantor be a trustee?
Thank
Yes,
you.
as
I'll go
long-
ahead and mute you now because of the music. Thanks.
The question is, can a grantor be a trustee? Yes, a grantor can be a trustee, especially if there's a second trustee that's not related, and especially it's easily done if they're not a beneficiary. In other words, I've had people come in and they're the grantor and the trustee because all it is for it was for his children to be the beneficiary. So in that sense, he could be there. But I always encourage a successor trustee if you just have one trustee, because something happens, then you need to have somebody be able to come in quickly and pick up the pieces and make it continue to work. So yes, a grantor can be a trustee.
On those conditions.
Yes. And everybody that's been on this show can now have access to me. Is that correct, Tanzan? So I can get particular with, especially with clients, any of you that are clients, we can always set up a chat and carry forward whatever process that you'd like to have for the trust.
All right, Shelley, I'm asking you to unmute, please, and ask your question.
Hello, I have two questions. Thinking about the difference between the trust that I have now, which is the irrevocable trust, and going for redemption. And then I also want to do projects. So do you recommend having different trusts for different projects? Say one's for healing, one's for real estate, one's for housing, one's for creative endeavors. I don't want to make it too complicated, but I also don't want it all clumped into one.
Well, it's a good question, Shelley, because a lot of clients are going to have that. So in the beginning, we can have the singular trust contain everything that's in it. And then as it grows and it starts to get really heavy, then we wanted to divest the trust and we create the trust. So you might have, in other words, when a beneficiary comes to me or somebody that wants to be a beneficiary, they might want to be a beneficiary of, say, 20 or 30%, and their humanitarian projects, which can be listed or don't have to be listed, can be all put in place. And then when that redemption happens, then all of that can go out and be put into the different projects. Like I have 50 projects on the mainland, and I have, I think, 35 projects here on Kauai that I want to help bring about. So yes, in the beginning, you take it all and then you divest it out, and you can put it in, you can either put it in just to the project, or you can create a trust for that project. It depends on how big you want to get it, and who are the people in your circle that you want to help run these projects.
Right. So to start out with, I thought there's a number of people I'd like to help with healing, alternative healing devices. So I'll start one that's
Sure.
for healing. And then if I need to break that into different ones, that then the beneficiaries become each of the different companies or whatever, do
Sure.
that later
You
on.
do that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Just
and so-
divest itself. In fact, in the trust indenture, there's a section for charitable contributions. So to encourage that, we put our paragraph in there that says, let's support all of these charities anywhere in the world that we want to do. So those are any kind of humanitarian projects you want to be involved with. Either you're going to support financially, or you're actually going to have a hands-on process with it. That's totally acceptable.
Okay, great. I think
Sure.
that answered both my questions. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Well, it's a nice view up the hill. What's the mow the lawn? That's what I want to know, Tanzan.
What's that?
How many people do you think it takes to keep that estate going in full circle all year round?
Oh, just a small army.
I'd get dizzy in there. I probably wouldn't be able to find my way out. Can't find my way home.
Well, Helen asked, if you have a nominee grantor, can the trustees be the same people as the beneficiaries?
No, you have to separate it out at some point. Otherwise, it's not a trust. You have to have a trustee that's separate from being a beneficiary. And if you're a trustee and you have a second co-trustee, then that co-trustee needs to be non-related. That's the way you get your separation. Otherwise, if you don't have the separation, then you get stuck. It's too close. That's a particularly difficult question for some people because a client comes to me and says, I just have this circle, and the 3 or 4 of us just want to keep it to ourselves. And I say, well, that's okay, but then you're not really creating a trust because the ball is too tight. There's not enough separation. You got to get some airspace in there. And so you don't want to have everybody all related. It gets a little twisted.
Maybe you can elaborate more because the next question is similar and it relates. April asked, hi, the second trustee not related. Do you mean by that a family member or could it be a de facto couple?
Well, it's a couple, but if you're a couple, you're a couple. So, legally you could probably deal with it, but ultimately, at some point you may run into a problem with it. Some people never get married, and so they stay together for a long time, and other people get married and then they don't stay together all the time. So it's really, if you're a couple, then I suggest you bring in a third party that's not related to one of you. That's the best way to put it.
Randall, your guidance has helped people stay out of trouble with these trusts, and that's fantastic. And at the same time, even though we know of no clients who have had to go to court with their trust, you do think in potential in case a court case were ever to arise based on all the law books you've read and court cases you've read, and Dominique also. So we think of the end possibility. Okay, if this were in court, how unrelated or how related are the trust officers? That's
Yes.
kind of how you think, I guess.
Yes, absolutely.
Is there
Tarzan,
legal
that's very
separation?
well put. Right. You need that separation. Just, even in it as a couple, sometimes you just need alone time. So you need to have some way to have that separation where you don't get yourself in trouble.
Well, one criterion would be not a member of the same household, right?
No, that's one criteria, but I just want you to, it's the wisest thing is to have one of the trustees be non-related in by blood, employment, marriage. It's the fourth one in there. But just have a non-related second trustee. That's the best way. Or if even a successor trustee, you can have one be the trustee and one person can be the successor trustee. Now, like I have clients where they're coming to me and they're training the children how to be a successor trustee because at some point they're going to pass on. And so at that point, because of that passing, then that related person can take over and become the new trustee. But in present time, you want to have somebody acting as a non-related third party. That's the best way to put it. Blood, employment, marriage, or something like that. But it's close enough.
Okay. Michelle asks, what crypto exchanges have already accepted an NLT, Natural Law Trust, registered for an account?
Well, I think they all have to go through a Coinbase. They have to go through a crypto trader. And I've had a couple of clients that have no problem putting going in, they're putting their crypto in with the trust.
Yeah, Coinbase is the largest in the United States. So we know we have clients who open accounts there. I don't know about other exchanges, but actually it's recommended in the crypto world to keep your own private wallet rather than using an exchange.
Right.
And then you can just have a minute in your trust that has transferred title of ownership of the crypto to the trust.
Right. That would be Schedule A in our trust, where actually crypto would be personal property. So you just detail the cryptos that you have as a minute and include it in Schedule A and also within the minutes.
And her second question is, what international investment trading platforms have any of your natural law trusts registered successfully? And it's just a wide variety, right, Randall?
We think so.
I know people have opened it at Schwab, Morgan Stanley, plenty of other major
Yes.
security houses.
Any wealth manager, any really well-to-do wealth manager typically will look at our trust and say, yeah, everything's in order as long as it's in order. And sometimes just like the bank, some banks don't want to do business with a trust and some wealth manager may not want to do, but that same Chase wealth manager in the next town over may say, oh yes, we'll take care of it for you, no problem. So again, it's individualized. It depends on the person that you have a relationship with.
All right, Faris has asked, how do you remove a beneficiary?
For what reason, I'd have to ask first. You can change beneficiaries, but I mean, if you're the grantor, then it's your prerogative to write a beneficiary out of the trust.
So generally the trustee would consult with the grantor and then the trustee would execute it?
Yeah, you have to, trustee'd have to write a letter to the beneficiary and say, grantor has decided that, that you're not to be involved with the trust anymore, and that's it. And that's why it's really important to have the clarity in the beginning, because it's just like a divorce. If you haven't written out fully what the expectations are in the beginning, then that's where you get into trouble coming down the line, because somebody's really unhappy with the decision, whereas the expectations have been one way and it didn't quite go the way they wanted to. It's a delicate situation, and if you don't want them to be a beneficiary, then I would have you think twice before you make them a beneficiary.
Randall, is it possible so say I'm a parent and I have a child who maybe has a drug-related issue, so I don't want to really make them a beneficiary because I'm concerned about their
Sure.
involvement in the trust. But is there a way that the trustees could gift something to this child if I, as the grantor, write a note and say, hey, you're caring for the other siblings, and every now and then gifting to this child, though not a beneficiary, is that allowed?
Well,
I think you lost signal.
it would be like a chip.
We have a Hawaii wave on the airwaves, Randall.
I have an unstable.
Randall, can you hear us? I think your Wi-Fi is breaking up.
It knocked him out.
Oh,
Well,
boy.
I actually know a little bit of the question. I'm sure he'll click back in, Tonson. In regards to what I've seen, Randall, counsel people in regards to their beneficiaries, there was one grantor who was also trustee. And what this person did was they reshuffled the beneficiaries and made a note that the reason why they took out one of the children is because that child requested it. That child decided that they didn't want to have anything to do with it. So it's really about getting with the grantor and keeping good minutes as to what's happening with the beneficiaries. But it's not common to remove a beneficiary. So when you are setting up your trust, that's why you really want to think things out. And there is in the trust indenture that Randall has written, there is permission for the trustees to give a gift. So the trustees would work with the grantor and try to fulfill the wishes of the grantor, even if a particular child was not a beneficiary. There you are. Hi, Randall.
Are you there,
Well,
Randall?
even that troubled child can be a beneficiary. I'm sorry?
We lost
Can you
you
hear
for a
me?
while there. Your Wi-Fi was breaking up or something.
I'm so far away in Hawaii that waves interrupt. Um, uh, that troubled child can be a beneficiary, and it can be like a guardianship thing where trustees give to the child contingent upon certain things. So it can still happen. And the only recourse, I mean, the one dreaded section we have in the trust is if the beneficiary argues it all, argues it all with the trustee, they can be snipped from the trust. So that's usually, what do we call it? We had a name for it, but basically, you didn't want to argue with the trustees on the fact that somebody else was getting a bigger portion of the asset base than you were. So it kept people in line, and it kept them in appreciation of what they were getting, not what they didn't get. So it all comes together when you have a well-written trust, and trustees are fair, and it goes along. Yes, and there's always going to be little troubles along the way, but one is younger people have guardians and older people have guardians, and we all have guardian angels, so it all works out in the end.
The trustee can just tell them to go back and practice their gratitude, you know?
Yes. A gratitude hour.
Yes. All right. Helen asked, if you have a property with a mortgage, can you just add the property equity to the trust? How would you do this?
Typically, you assign the whole piece of property to the trust, and the mortgage would just follow the property,
And the equity.
the equity. Yes, it'll go in at the new base. It would actually, it can stay. Let's say you bought a house for 100,000, it's worth 3 now. Even if you put it in trust, it goes in at that equity of that $100,000 original equity.
Okay. Carrie, welcome. Nice to hear from you. You have a question. I have 3 bank accounts. One is the trust's account and 2 others. Is there one of your videos that discusses how to manage funds flowing, what is appropriate for the trust to be doing, and what needs to be done outside of it?
Is that an accounting process that Dominique's going to attack in her book?
Would you like me to say a few words?
Sure, say a few words. That'd be great.
What I've learned from Randall is write down notes about what you want done where, and keep in mind that you don't want to commingle. So your trust is paying for expenses that have to do with caring for assets, and your other bank accounts should have their purpose. So you should have
Right.
a personal bank account to buy diapers and so forth. And maybe if the trust is involved in a project, it might have a separate bank account for running that project. But you want to lay it out on a piece of paper where it makes sense about what's happening inside of each account. And don't get sloppy with debit cards. Keep it clean. Don't commingle what's going on for you, and it will
Right.
work.
Very good. Very well put, Dominique. No commingling.
All right. David asked, if I want to be an active trustee,
Uh,
I'm just wondering if your sound is still on. Okay.
I just
Randall, I think we're missing you. Your sound is breaking up.
had a question this morning. Here. Must be the internet. That's all I can say.
You're back.
Seem
Well, at least you were.
It's the Hawaii wave.
Dominique, I'll go ahead and ask the question, and if Randall can answer it, great. If not, maybe you can.
Very good.
David asked, if I want to be an active trustee, is it okay to have a non-related person to just act as the second trustee who doesn't mind helping out but may not want to be an active trustee?
yes. That can happen
Yes. You're back.
for the moment.
That's a big yes.
It's a
Yes.
big yes, David.
It
Yes.
typically is, a lot of times people will be the executive trustee. And the secondary trustee will just be there to add to and help the executive trustee do most of the work. That's typically how it works.
In my trust, we made one of our trustees an executive secretary of the trust. And she has, I made her a stamp, an embossing stamp for any very important documents. So she's like our main one that's going to sign something. But most of the time we sign both.
Right. You can, either one. As long as there's a paper trail, that's the most important aspect of it. A paper trail, signatures in the right place. Somebody asked me this morning that, well, I got a trustee over on the East Coast and a trustee on the West Coast. I said, well, it doesn't matter anymore because the way email and everything is done in the air anyway, it's not a problem. Around the world, people in Europe can sign documents and have it flashed back to the US in a matter of minutes.
Your sound has been great the last few minutes. Okay. Michelle says, do all beneficiaries need to live in the same country?
No, not at all.
Great question. Unusual question. I don't think anyone's asked that before.
Well, I think most people think that all beneficiaries are part of a family. But obviously, we all know that we have families where people live in different states and or different countries.
And you can have charitable organizations as beneficiaries.
Same. That's right. Exactly right. It's a world wide web.
Yep. All right. And she says, can a nominee grantor be living in a different country to the rest of the roles?
Yes, especially the nominee, because the nominee grantor, as soon as they relinquish control of the trust, unless they happen to be a beneficiary, they're pretty much out of the picture anyway. No, that's the whole thing about a nominee grantor is basically they establish the trust. They get it all together, they get everybody's signature in the right place. Then they give up their control to the the executive trustee, and then they're free to leave or participate later in a different way.
All right. Alora asked, and Randall, I can answer this if you want. I had a set up an international pill trust. Do you remember those? Prosper International League Limited
Huh.
in the 90s.
Oh, yeah, yes, yes, yes.
Well, maybe you can answer it. Sorry, I couldn't get my video to turn on today. But she says she had set up a pill trust 20 years ago, haven't used it. Is that entity of any relevance to interact or complement this natural law trust? Or is it so totally different in its nature?
I'd have to look at the document, but if there's been a paper trail over this period of time, then I would say that it fits right in, either as an aspect of the natural law trust or to just coexist alongside it.
Well, it's a statutory trust. It's domiciled in Belize with offices in the Bahamas. At least it was 20 years ago.
You'd have
And
to see.
so
I mean,
it's-
you just have to see if there's anybody home.
yeah,
If there's
and I think
nobody home.
the-
yeah,
the administration offices long since disappeared. I think they disbanded.
Right. That's the problem with these groups that just come together and ride a wave and then they all go on their own, whereas we've been around for 40 years anyway.
Well, the comment about statutory trusts in general, even if they're based in friendly tax havens, is the government could change their laws next year. And then your trust could
Sure.
either be, invalidated, or it might not have the features anymore that you wanted. And whereas a natural law trust, that contract law that it's based on goes on generation after generation, century after century. It's unchanging. It's not going to expire.
Yes, because it's not based on statutory law.
It's not based on laws that can change. Yeah.
That's right.
Michelle also asked, in the statutory world, business names are registered, of course, and we cannot choose a name that is already registered. So I'm wondering, when we choose a name for our natural law trust, is there a similar list of names already taken, or can it be anything as we have no public register for it?
I've never really put a name out there that had already been taken, but I wouldn't be able to answer that in any solid sense. Depends on what country you're in to see if there's maybe a register in that country or state, but hasn't ever affected any of our clients or the clients that I've had.
Well, what she could do is check a public register for corporations and public trusts, statutory trusts, see if the name's taken. If it is, maybe name the private trust something different. But there's no concern about two natural law trusts having the same name. So what? They're all kept private anyway.
I can add to that. Most of the time on legal documents, when you put the full name of the trust, you also include the trust creation date. So it's like like a grain of sand to get a similar name and the exact same trust creation date.
Yeah.
It's probably never going to happen.
Very rarely. I think everybody's safe on that base.
Laura asks, is there a benefit to the transferring property only with no dwelling on it to this natural law trust before selling potentially?
No, the trust can take in and acquire or sell anything like any other natural person can do. As long as it's not illegal, you can do what you would like to do.
Put land in it and call it a land trust.
Sure. Well, you put the land in it and basically you can name the trust anything you'd like. Doesn't have to be a land trust. It's just a trust with a name to it, and it contains, or it's been assigned, a piece of property.
Right.
And you'll have trustees and you'll have a creation date.
All right. And Michelle asked, can you have other trusts as beneficiaries?
Sure. They keep on going down, Kennedys and Rockefellers, they get too top heavy. Okay, let's create another 100 trust and do it that way. It just keeps trickling down, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, etc., all the way as far as you want to take it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Eric asked, which documents of the trust cannot be a trust minutes document?
I didn't quite get the essence of that question. Sorry.
Which documents of the trust cannot be a trust minutes document?
Well, they could all be. They're all the trust indenture is so many pages long, and the signatures are all so many pages long, and the different schedules, and they all belong to a whole paradigm. So they're all in a sense a minute. It's your paper trail. Minutes basically mean it's your paper trail of what the trust has been doing. So you have an indenture, you have signatures, you have a creation date, you have schedules. It's all combined. It's all one thing. So they're all in a sense a minute.
That's
A
interesting.
recording. A minute, to me, a minute is a recording of something.
Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. It's not a big important issue though.
No, like I said, it's the paper trail. It's really what you're looking for to keep it legal, keep it going, keep it on its toes, keep it out of trouble, is to have a good paper trail.
All right. Michelle asked, in the case of having a project as a beneficiary, what structure does it need to be in? A natural law trust of its own or something else? I'm wondering what criteria makes it recognizable as a beneficiary when it isn't a person.
It just, beneficiary can be a project. I have numerous projects that have a name to it, and they have somebody that's going to manage this particular project. And I just put them down. I put the name of the project down as the beneficiary. It doesn't have to be a person.
Would, in order for money to be sent to that project though, that there would have to be something with a name on it that has some sort of structure with a bank account, I guess.
Yes, like the projects that I have are all abstracts of what the project is. So it all has a name. It has somebody that's going to be a manager. And so when this all gets funded, then it would immediately become a working mechanism.
I hope that satisfies you, Michelle. Eric, I recently tried to open an HSBC trust account and filled out the trust application papers, but the bank finally denied me to open that account and mentioned it had to do with common law, but what can I do to still open the HSBC account? Well, I would say tell them you have 10 or $20 million you want to put in. That'll probably change their minds. Randall?
Tell them it's not a common law trust. It's an irrevocable, it's a private irrevocable trust. It's a contract between myself and two other gentlemen. And we just want to have a simple bank checking account to make this thing happen. It's not common law. It's just a contract. And the right to contract is pretty much written in every country. Your sovereign right to contract.
We were also talking about how the Hague Convention in 1985 wrote up a whole agreement about recognizing trusts because they're so important to commerce.
That's correct.
And Dominique, I'm going to put that into the frequently asked questions to be added to the website and also into the ebook. Where else do you plan to publish that?
I can include it in the the trust notes book.
All right.
We're gonna put it in.
Are you going to
we're
put
gonna
it in the
put
accounting book?
Ulysses. We're gonna write a book. She's writing a book called Ulysses.
Could you, Dominique, would you be so kind as to, for the benefit of the audience, just say a few words more about The Hague and the significance of that?
Sure. So, trusts originated out of England's rich history of the chancery courts and their common law courts, which were the royal courts of England. And so, trust and trust law came out of understanding that you can, in good conscience, volunteer to take on a responsibility. That's what a fiduciary is. You're volunteering to take on a responsibility to care for assets for the sake of someone else. So it's a very unusual position. And so this beautiful entity gave birth within England's rich history. So Randall was explaining, I really appreciated it, how there are a lot of countries that were, they were conquered by England, so they didn't want England's common law. So there are countries that are run by civil law. And in our trustee study group, we took a look. There's a Wikipedia website where you can look at a map and you can see all the countries in the world whose governance is based on common law, and the other countries that may have a combination, and then other countries that are based on civil law. But what the Hague Convention did was they recognized that everyone has a right to contract and that this is a unique entity. And you can find it if you go to the Hague Convention and you look up under conventions, there's a whole list of different things that they've worked on. But in 1985, they worked on recognizing trusts internationally. And you can read up exactly how they describe the trust is exactly the way Randall has written the trust indenture. And so yes, it is internationally recognized, and it doesn't matter about whether a country runs through common law or civil law. How people handle property through a trust vehicle can still be handled and recognized within civil law as well.
So Eric, if you could, if you're a trust client, ask Randall, if you can get that to him. Dominique, I assume you've sent it in writing to Randall for him to forward and share with clients. And if you present that to HSBC, it could, make a difference in they're being favorable. Another thing you can try is go to a different HSBC branch. We've said this many times to clients. I had this experience myself with my consort. She took a natural law trust to a Wells Fargo branch and they said no, they wouldn't open the account, no explanation. So she just went down the street about a mile away to a different Wells Fargo branch and they said yes with a smile and they opened the account.
Yes, it's your individual banker. Each bank, even though it's all Wells Fargo, there's a little within the in-house system that operates, and all you have to do is make your relationship with the particular bankers, which is what life anyway.
Laura asks, what constitutes top heavy? Is it value of assets within it? Any parameters of recommendation?
It's your asset base. It's a value that you put on the estate that belongs to the trust. Can be multiple real estates. It can be multiple investment funds. It's just that a point where it gets, you'd like to have an easier management process for it. So you take a quarter of your estate and you put it over here into a new trust, and you have a trustee and a manager have that aspect of it and say, run it this way. You might have a part of it that you want to hold onto. And so you have somebody that's using this as a strong box, basically as a safe. And so top heavy it's basically a choice that you make. when you say, oh, I think it's time to break this up and take some of these assets and divest some of these assets or trade them for different things. Now with crypto coming in, maybe a good time to think about replacing gold with crypto or vice versa. It's really a personal choice.
It follows the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Correct.
And we heard the rumor that the Rockefellers had some 7,000 of these trusts in early 90s. So
Sure. I'm sure they're still happening. There's a
All
lot
right.
of gold out there.
Helen asked, I don't think it's very easy to get a mortgage through a trust. What are the experiences of this?
I think, again, it's depending upon the relationship you have with the banker. You have to have the value. The estate has to have a certain value. It's just like having, if you own your house or the trust owns a house, it walks into the bank, says, we'd like to take a loan to buy this house. And it's because of the value of what's in the trust, which would allow that to happen.
Yeah, you can, build up credit on the trust just like you build up credit in any
Sure.
other name.
I've also seen clients, especially if there's going to be a mortgage on it, set up a little mini LLC, and it's like run it as a mini little company. And so the trust owned the LLC, but the property was under the LLC. There's so many different ways that owning property can be done.
Right.
Yes. All right. Margaret asks, the bank needs an EIN in the USA to open a bank account, or ABN in Australia, doesn't it? Randall, remind me, didn't you hear from some clients in Australia that they didn't need a number unless it's officially some sort of business?
I'm still working on that one. I have people down there that don't need an ABN number. I have people in Europe and United Kingdom that just walked into the bank and opened it with their own ID passport. So it just depends on the country where you are. Most banks in the US, you have to have a number. I haven't heard back from Australia yet, but I believe that a lot of the banks down there require a number.
They
Canadians
depend on
wanna
the bank. Yeah.
Canadians have a bank number now, so it's the government wanting to get their fingers into the taxability.
We heard that Australians were getting ABN numbers for their bank accounts, but then more recently, I think we remember someone got their bank account open without it.
Yes.
So better
Again,
to try without it first.
It's relationship with your banker.
Mhm.
That's why you're always looking to cultivate a relationship with a banker. If you find a good banker and you work well together, then stay with it.
And she also asked, or Alora asked, which are the better banks in Australia that are more aware and open to these contract bank accounts?
I don't know the banks of Australia. I couldn't say. But
When
I
people-
can find out, actually.
When people ask that about any place, though, US, we usually answer by saying it's not by the bank, it's by which branch, which employee, what mood they're in,
Yeah.
what relationship you have with them.
Yes, that's the bottom line. It's always about relationship.
I know someone who just got an account open at Westpac in Australia, but it could be because he was putting $1 million in. I don't know. And that
Money
was
counts.
for a natural law trust.
Cash is king.
Yeah. Michelle asks, in the case of someone holding cryptocurrency assets in their own name for several months or more, if they exchange those assets into a natural law trust, is it correct that will not trigger a tax event?
It shouldn't, because especially when you own the crypto and you put it in a trust and you're a beneficiary, then there would not be any tax consequence. It's an equal exchange.
And the reason is because you receive units of beneficial interest which don't have any monetarily determinable value
Correct.
on any
That's
public
correct.
exchange. In a similar vein, she asks, can a company or a statutory trust exchange assets into a natural law trust?
Sure. Any asset can be put into the trust. Any asset can be exchanged. Any asset can be sold out of the trust.
We've even heard people who put a cat into a trust.
A cat in a hat.
All right, David D asks, can you explain the difference in benefits of a revocable trust and irrevocable trust? I have a natural law trust for exchange, but was thinking of a revocable trust for real estate property.
The problem with the reason I don't like revocable trust is that you don't have the separation there. You own it, basically. A revocable trust means that you can, at any time that you want, you can just take the house out of the trust and take it back into your own name. So you don't have that liability protection that you would with an irrevocable trust. That's, again, it goes back to that separation we talked about earlier between ownership and control. Dominique and I were talking a little bit about revocable. A lot of married people have revocable, two revocable trusts, and then each one has the asset base that they came into the relationship with or they've built upon. And when one passes along, then the other one receives the benefit of the first trust, and then that one trust becomes irrevocable.
If I can add something, every single revocable trust becomes irrevocable when the grantor dies, or one of the grantor one of the original grantors died. And so banks do work with irrevocable trusts all the time.
Sure. Who else?
Okay, we have admin asked, a private foundation can be a beneficiary of the trust, yes?
Yes.
I think, Randall, people ask these questions sometimes because they're used to limits and boundaries in the statutory world, that we don't have so many limits and boundaries in something as flexible as the natural law trust.
That's right. Much more flexibility, especially when you have two good trustees and they have a value base, and also it's going back into the fiduciary responsibility, the loyalty. Who are we responsible to, and how do we do that? So that's what enhances a natural law trust, is that ability to be stable and to make it work for the beneficiaries.
All right, Michelle asks, are there any time frame limitations on how often you can make changes to the trust?
No, the trustees have full ability to adjust, make amendments, adjustments, whatever. It's you just have to have a paper trail. What are we doing here? Why are we doing this? How does it affect the beneficiaries? Yes, no, maybe, and then sign on the dotted line and have a paper trail that goes into the minutes of the trust document.
Right. So keeping good minutes, keeping them in a paper form in a 3-ring binder, and keeping an electronic form backup in your computer.
You can do that, thumb drives.
Thumb drive, yeah, backup drives, whatever.
I mean, in the way streaming is going, in a couple of years, we're gonna have a whole new mechanism of all our banking, all of our paper, everything is gonna be electronic or some mechanism. And we also want to have it recoverable. In other words, so I had a client, was really interesting. She was caught in the fire in California a couple of years ago, and the only thing she escaped with was her trust book. And so that's all she had. But because she had kept it all together, she was able to piece her whole estate back together, other than what burned down. But that's what she had. And she was very had a lot of gratitude that she had kept that and had done the proper accounting, because she could show
Amazing.
what's there.
All right, Michelle asks, and is it correct to say that a manager can be a beneficiary but not a trustee, and a trustee can still be a beneficiary if they have a secondary non-related trustee? Maybe I should give you those questions one at a time. It sounds like two questions. First
Well, I
part
think-
is it correct to say that a manager can be a beneficiary but not a trustee?
Yes, that's true.
And the second part is, and a trustee can still be a beneficiary if they have a secondary non-related trustee, yes?
That's correct.
You're learning well, Michelle.
Very quickly, I'd say.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay. Someone named PA says, I have an abstract of the Natural Law Trust. Recently, one of my trustees has advocated that I exchange my currency into a skeleton trust, as I would lose control of the money, then take the time to decide how the trust should be structured, or even an LLC that would own the trust. Your thoughts?
It sounds complicated to me. I think the way it's set up is just keep it as it is. It's, the more simple it is, the better off. So that's how I'd put it.
You got to be careful, everybody, who you listen to out there. Randall, I can't tell you how many times, how every day I get people who have been given all kinds of ridiculous advice by ignorant people out there.
That's okay. It's part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to be careful who you listen to.
If I
Oh.
can also add, I think the skeleton trusts that I've heard a lot of people talking about are revocable trusts, and are even possibly having a bank as one of the trustees. I mean, there's a lot of things out there. And the thing about working with Randall on setting up your natural law trust, even if you only have the abstract, you are properly set up. And the memorandum that's contained in the abstract contains all the powers of the trustee. That is the
Right.
essence of the indenture. So you are fully set.
Well, that's why we decided to do just that, Dominique, is we knew that if we took a certain section of the trust and put it together in its own piece, that it would meet the requirements for whatever people needed in the moment. Now, for the full benefit, you need to have the whole indenture, but for a lot of the things that we were doing, that abstract was just enough, and it's worked quite well over the years.
Also, PA, you said something about can an LLC own the trust? And just the point being that nobody and nothing can ever own a natural law trust. It owns itself. It's one of the reasons we refer to it as sovereign.
Well, and in addition to that, I would say people come to me and they say, well, I have an LLC, I have a business, I have this, and I want it to own the trust. And I said, no, you've got the cart before the horse. What you want to do is you make the natural law trust the owner of the LLC or whatever it is, whatever mechanism it is. The storefront, your storefront whatever it is you're doing should be owned by the trust. That way, you have the separation and you have that solid, just like this picture right here I have in front of me. The moon is solid and it contains everything else around it. And that's what you want. You have a storefront and you have the back office, and you want the trust to be the back office. That's where the power lies, in the back office. The storefront is what you put out there to everybody's face, so that they're drawn in to get what you have in your store.
Thank you.
So
Yes,
There's
beautiful.
there's no ownership in a natural law trust. There's a contract. I mean, if there's anything, there's nothing that's owned. It's just a contract between three people typically. It's your word, your fiduciary responsibility, your understanding of how to make a judicial judgment, a judgment on something, natural judgment, a discretion.
All right. Ross asks, I just set up a natural law trust to receive commission payments from a network marketing company and have opened a bank account for the trust. However, the commission payments are dispensed through a debit card connected to the network marketing company, and then I have to transfer that to the bank account. Do you see a problem with that? Would you consider this a business trust?
Well, it's not a business trust. It's just you're making a transaction from one card to another. So there shouldn't be any worries about how that is, unless the business card, the card that's transferring the your commission is just, it's like getting paid by your employer or your contract. You make a contract with somebody, they hand you a check. It's the same thing. That's how I would see it.
You could just specify it in the minutes, right?
Yes. I'm doing this. This is what I get for it. And this is how it goes into the trust.
All right. Gregory asks, when structuring a trust as a business, would it be possible to create a contract to pay one of the trustees a distribution upon leaving, similar to paying out a shareholder upon selling their shares back to a corporation, maybe if they are also a beneficiary?
I wouldn't pay a trustee a significant sum. The trustee would normally be taking a fee for the work that he's doing anyway. If you want to have him leave and give him a gift as he leaves, then that's one thing. Can be as a beneficial gesture, or it can, it's just it's a severance pay.
But while he's serving as trustee, he can also receive fees for his performance, yes?
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry, I missed that part of it, but yes, the trustees can be, should be gathering their monetary value as time goes along, weekly, monthly basis, however you want to set it up. They deserve a fee like anybody else.
All right. Amarval asked, as owners, directors of an LLC, papers were signed with the bank many years ago to take on all liabilities for the LLC. How does one remove oneself from those direct liabilities by transferring the LLC into the trust?
Well, if I was I wouldn't transfer the LLC into the trust. I might make the trust an owner of the LLC, but I would make the contract such that any liability is discharged and stays with the LLC, but it doesn't go into the trust whatsoever. You don't want to take any liability into the trust. That's why you never put an automobile into into a trust because it's a liability. Anything that's a liability, you don't want to put into a trust.
All right, a lot of nice comments coming in, Randall. Thank you and gratitude and good analogy and so on. Some praise for Dominique and Dominique, earlier in the program we had someone saying, "Can't wait till your book comes out."
Yeah, me either.
All right, and Michelle asks, "How do you make the natural law trust an owner of an LLC?"
Well, you just you'd set up a contract. You say ABC LLC hereby contracts with NLT for a certain amount and or certain party ownership, and it's just a contract. I've had, when Marissa was alive, we did things together and we did like 2% each. And the trust would have 96% of our endeavor. And we shifted it around sometimes to have more come to each one of us. It just depends. It's always a choice and you can change it. Basically, you could change it whenever you like. But the idea is to set it up in the beginning so that you understand that you want the majority of the profit potential to go into the trust.
Yeah, and I tell people don't put 100% of the LLC into the trust because then it would look funny to the statutory people.
Yeah, the tax people that I worked with said always have a live person involved with an LLC.
Yeah, at least have a small part of it.
Yeah.
Shelley asked, "What is a normal fee for one trustee for one trust?"
It depends on how much equity or income the trust is receiving. It's totally a choice.
Yeah, that's totally your choice. Yeah. Marianne says, "This has been a tremendously amazing webinar. The people, the information, the energy, everything was absolutely fulfilling. Much love and gratitude to all."
Is that Marianne from Quebec?
I
My
think
favorite.
so. Thank you, Marianne. That's beautiful.
Thank you, Marianne. It's good to hear your voice again.
She
Or
says,
see your
"Love to
name."
see you on fire, Randall."
Yes, I've been on fire today.
Well, just don't burn up. Okay, Amaral says, "Thank you again for wonderful advice and interesting discussion." April says, "Is this recorded to go over again?" Yes, it is. We'll be posting it on YouTube here in the next couple of days. Ross says, "What would you recommend as a fee range to pay trustees?" We just answered that. It's really up to
Yeah.
you.
It's a choice.
Faris says, "Randall, where would you place your vehicles then? I was told to place them in the trust."
No, please do not do that. Planes and trains and automobiles do not belong in a trust unless it's an expensive, very, very expensive car or whatever, then put it in its own trust. It should be separate.
Yeah, designate a separate
Anything can
trust
hurt
for,
anybody. Yeah, anything that can hurt anybody should not be put in with an asset. No liability goes with an asset.
unless it's the only asset in that trust.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Admin says, "Totally agree. Great show." Michelle says, "Thank you, Randall, Dominique, and Tonson. So appreciate your time and wisdom."
That's what we're here for.
Thank you, everyone. Everyone's pouring in a lot of nice comments. Anything final, Dominique or Randall?
No, just come back and see us next month. We'll finish some more really good things.
Okay, everyone, June 16th, we're going to do next month, and then we're going to take a break for a couple of months after that. So put it on your calendar. We'll send out a newsletter with the link. And we'll wrap up, and thank you, both of you, Randall and Dominique.
Thank you, Randall.
Oh, thank you, Dominique. Thank you, Tanzan, and thank all of you out there. It's so fun to just, have some of this wisdom come out and go and be taken up by somebody else. I like it.
You're establishing a legacy.
Well, I don't go that far, but thank you very much. One leg I stand on, I guess.
All right, everyone, dive deep, be well, and fly high.
Aloha from the beautiful island of Kauai.
Aloha.
See you next month.
And
All
mahalo.
right. Thank you.
Okay, take care.